The following is an interview with Dr. Harold Garrison made in 1971. There will be a series of 2 or 3 interviews, one following the other in this tape at this point.
Dr. Garrison, where were you born and when?
Is it on?
Yes,
I was born in Hugo, Oklahoma, Choctaw County, southeastern part of the state, on November 4, 1908.
Where did you receive your first schooling, Dr. Garrison?
Well, I graduated from high school at Hugo, doing all of my public school work at Hugo. And then I attended Bethany Penile College, which is today Bethany Nazarene College at Bethany, Oklahoma, for a period there of 5 years. But during that time, I also went to Oklahoma City University and to the University of Oklahoma, finally getting my bachelor's degree from Bethany Penile College in 1932. Now, the reason it took 5 years is because I had typhoid fever during one of those years, and I had to lose one complete semester and a part of another semester of work because of that typhoid fever. That's the reason I took 5 years. That is, that in addition to my having a slow brain and so on and so forth.
After getting your bachelor's degree, Dr. Garrison, what was your next move as far as, did you go into a job or did you go on to
Well,
graduate
my
school?
next move following that was to try to find a job. I graduated in 1932, what was called perhaps the midpoint of the Depression, the Big Depression, the 29 and 30 and 31 and 32 and 33 and 34 Depression. So I began looking for a job, and I didn't know what I was going to do at first when I was approaching graduation. Therefore, the last semester I took 8 hours of education and received a 2-year temporary teaching certificate to teach in Oklahoma. And I went back to Choctaw County and found a job at Swink, Oklahoma. Swink is 20 miles east of Hugo. And I became high school principal of a 2-year high school, teacher of English, teacher of general science in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grades at Swink, Oklahoma. I was there 3 years. Then I went to Fort Townsend, Oklahoma, which is between Hugo and Swink, as elementary principal and girls basketball coach for 2 years. And then following that, in 1937, I went to Durant, Oklahoma, as elementary principal at one of the award schools in Durant, where I stayed until 45. Now, during the time I was at Swink and Fort Townsend, I attended Northwestern University at Evanston, Illinois, and completed work on the master's degree, the Master of Science degree I attended during summers, getting that degree in 1936. I stayed at Durant as elementary principal from 1937 to 45. And when I learned that they were not going to call me for World War II service, because I did take a physical, but I wasn't assigned. Now, I was assigned, but they hadn't called me. I was assigned to the Navy, but they hadn't called me. And in 45, when the war progress came along so far that they weren't going to need me, then I began determining where I could go to school and work toward a doctor's degree. And George Peabody College for teachers at Nashville, Tennessee, made me a good offer to come over there and work toward the degree and do some work in reading and clinical aspects of teaching of reading to children who were having difficulty. So I got my doctor's degree there 3 years later.
After you finished your doctorate, or while you were working on your doctorate, were you the equivalent of a research assistant in the terminology of today, or a teaching assistant?
Oh yes, during my time at Peabody, I became proficient, or rather capable, of administering all sorts of psychological and academic tests which are needed to determine why children don't learn to read on the level expected of them in terms of their native ability. In fact, I guess I've administered at least 1,000 Simone Binet intelligence tests myself. In fact, I have my own complete kit today. And as a result of all that, after I did get my degree, I received many offers, several offers to take a job after I got my degree. North Texas State College in Denton, Texas, gave me what I considered the best offer. In 1948 and 49, I was director of the demonstration school and director of student teaching there. But the University of Oklahoma learned that I was at Denton and needed a reading specialist. So the University of Oklahoma made me an offer to come to OU, and I did in 1949, June 1st. I was there as director of the reading laboratory and professor of elementary education from June 1st, 1949 until I came over here as president of Northeastern State College on March the 12th of 1961.
Dr. Garrison, what kind of experience did you have as a professor that qualified you in terms of your background for the job? Asking what you felt were your major qualifications for the job of president.
Bill, I didn't plan to go into administration, except I'll say this: I did take my master's degree in school administration, but I wasn't thinking about college administration. I was just thinking about administration in general, and especially on the public school level, because I did have some desires to become a school superintendent. However, I really never did become a school superintendent as such, except I was head of the school of Swink. And well, after it lost its 2-year teaching, its 2-year high school, it became an elementary school, and the superintendent left, and so I became superintendent of the elementary school. But I really didn't intend to go into administration because I liked classroom teaching. I loved it. And so I went into college teaching. I didn't even look for an administrative job after I got my master's degree. And yet, this administrative job at Denton, Texas, was a good job. Director of the demonstration school and director of student teaching. But just as soon as OU had this reading job, classroom job, and laboratory job available, I took it because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be in the classroom, working with teachers and working with students. And yet, when I was there about 19 months, and then the presidency here at Northeastern became available, I didn't even apply for the job. They informed me they were going to interview candidates one day on Monday of March the 12th. The day before, I was informed they were going to interview candidates, and some members of the board had expressed an interest in my being interviewed. And so I was called and asked if I would come up for an interview. I did. And they employed me that day, at the end of the day. And I wasn't even, I hadn't even planned to be a college president. Hadn't planned to be. I'd made no plans because I wanted to become a reading specialist. But the experiences are so varied and so different in a presidency. I'm not sorry that I accepted the call to the presidency. I really hadn't planned on it.
Dr. Garrison, while you were at the University of Oklahoma, did you do any
I have a feeling, and I always have had a feeling, that actually the field of education, most significant writing will come from, especially by college faculty members, will come from classroom experiences. And the faculty member will use his students in terms of helping him to write that which is significant. Well, because of my being reading laboratory director and interested in the reading field, a publishing company asked me if I would go to Texas A&M College, and interview a teacher who had introduced a phonetics approach to the teaching of reading in the first, second, and third grades of Texas A&M Consolidated School, which seemingly was going over in big fashion with her and with her co-workers, but was frowned on by some of the so-called reading experts because of introducing the phonetic approach in the first grade. Most of them seem to think that phonetics should not be introduced until about the third grade. And I told them I would. I went to Texas. I stayed at Texas A&M Consolidated School for 1 week and interviewed her program. And I said to this president of this economy company, I said, I wholeheartedly endorse what she is doing, and I would like to know more about it. He said, well, would you come down and test all of these children in all the 6th grades of this program, because all those children had been through this process. And she made the statement that she didn't have any child who was having any difficulty learning how to read and reading up to the level expected of him as far as his intelligence is concerned, native intelligence. So I went to Texas A&M and stayed for 2 weeks and gave all of those children tests, every one. And I found that every one of them was reading upon his expected level, and above the grade level he was in, except a few who were natively incapable of learning how to read upon their expected level because of, maybe some trick which was played on them in birth, such as slow mind or something like that. And so this president said, well, would you serve as consultant? This woman wants to publish her material. Would you serve as consultant? I said, yes. And so I served as consultant with the beginning of a new approach which we call phonetic keys to reading. Mrs. Sloop, the woman's name, she was the first author. And then later on, when I was offered, and I served as consultant through the first book, TAG, T-A-G, the very first book. And later on, when I came over here, the president of this company said, well, I would like to put your name on the book because you've done so much research on this, using it with your own students in the clinic there at University of Oklahoma. And they've used the approach with students whom you've helped to direct, who came to the clinic for help. I'd like to put your name on the book and like you to still consult with us and work with Mrs. Sloop in developing this series. And so I did. I worked with the series while I was at Northeastern State College over the first 10 years I was here.
And that's what is referred to in reading circles today as the economy series.
That's right. That is it. That is it. The phonetic approach to the teaching of reading, which is the economy series. And actually, its form, I actually developed its form, the form that it's in today. However, I'll say this. I don't care whether you have this on tape or not, but the president of the company was disappointed when I took this presidency because we were doing so well with it. And he thought I should stay in the field of reading. Well, frankly, I should have stayed in the field as far as finances are concerned, because I would have made a lot more money in it than I made over here. But we had an agreement that when it came time to revise the series, that if I were not back in the field of teaching and reading, that I would permit the publishing company to take my name on it and to put the name of a reading specialist on it to continue the consulting work with them, because most reading teachers, most teachers wonder, well, what does a college president know about the teaching of reading? And so, I believe it was the year of 1965. They revised the complete series. After I came to Calico, I made $40,000 out of that. That's right, for my share of it.
That was an awfully profitable royalty.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Certainly not the usual pattern. Well, I knew that you had some association with reading in terms of building, yes, and I had known the economy company was this, and that's the reason I asked the question.
Well, I was just beginning to get into research at OU, just beginning to. Because, oh yes, I was teaching adult classes, speed reading classes in Oklahoma City. All the time I was at OU at night, a couple of times during the week, I'd go to Oklahoma City and teach speed reading classes. In fact, one class I had 12 leading attorneys in Oklahoma City in my classes. And I was just beginning to get into research when this job opened up over here, and I took this job, and of course I didn't have time for it.
Dr. Garrison, when you came to Northeastern, do you remember your original impressions of the college, and could you state those?
Well, when I was informed that I was president, and I didn't learn it until 3 hours after they appointed me as president, because I was shopping in Oklahoma City. I didn't know it until I got home that night at Norman, and the telephone was ringing, and I answered the telephone, and the Dean of the College of Education, oh, you say you've been appointed president of Northeastern State College. Where in the world have you been? And anyway, I went up to see the board that night. Well, my first impression was, actually the first impression was to refuse it. Because I had never been to Calico, and I had never been to Northeastern State College. I had been all around. I'd been to Muskogee, I'd been to Fayetteville, I'd been up to Joplin, but I'd never been to Calico, and I'm a native Oklahoman. In other words, I was taking a job sight unseen if I actually took it. And yet I said to the chairman of the board when he finally got in touch with me, I said, I'll come up and talk with you. And they said they were still in Oklahoma City in Sterling Hotel. And when I talked with them, they assured me that the higher educational schools in Oklahoma were completely out of politics, because I had lived through several administrations. The governor of the state told the faculty what to do, and that we have a constitutional board, and the board ran it. I said, okay. I said, I'll accept the job. When I came to Calico, that was on March the 12th. When I came to Calico for the first time on March the 14th, on Wednesday, I came in from Muskogee, drove in, and I had no idea what I was coming to. So when I got to Sequoia School out south of town here, I thought that was Northeastern State College. And I stopped there, and they said, no, this isn't Northeastern. They said, Northeastern's on down the road about 3 miles. And when I came to the campus at Northeastern State College, I drove around, and I looked at the campus physically, and I saw right then, as far as I'm concerned, that a great deal of work needs to be done.
What buildings were existing on campus when you arrived?
The present administration, the former administration building, Seminary Hall, a former Cherokee Female Seminary was existing. The library, present library was here, just finished. The Industrial Arts Building was just being completed. The present Speech Clinic Building was here. And those were the only educational buildings on the campus. Now, the foundation had been laid for the present auditorium and fine arts building and the student union building. Just the foundation, footing, had been laid in, and they were under construction. Haskell Hall and Wilson Hall Dormitory. Those were the buildings which were at that time.
What about the present education building? Was that?
Oh, the present education building, yes. Yes, it was here, and they also had a 12-year public school operated by the college in that building. Yes.
In that public school, was this to serve the Tahlequah area residents, or was this some kind of special school?
No, any student who lived anywhere could go to school to this school. Mainly the students came from the city of Tahlequah and also from the rural areas here, because they had a cooperative agreement with the public schools that children could enroll either there or in the public schools and could ride the buses.
Was this
demonstration school?
A demonstration school?
Yes. It was called demonstration school, yes. But that school didn't last very long after I came here, because I personally don't like a special setup on a college campus. I think it's discriminatory. I think your teachers in training don't get the proper training in a demonstration school that they should get in a public school, since they're going to go out and teach in the public school.
What was the size of the faculty when you arrived, Dr. Garrison?
47 faculty
In the various
total faculty members, total number. That included the demonstration school faculty.
Do you recall what the budget appropriation was?
Approximately $400,000.
Do you recall the size of the student body?
897. No, 987. 987.
Well, during the presidency, your presidency, which spanned almost 20 years, 19 years or 29.
Well, it lacked 3 months being 20 years.
Yes. The college grew tremendously, both in physical buildings and student body size and in faculty size. Could you outline for me the major problems that you encountered immediately upon your arrival at the college, and then as your memory serves you, those problems that you encountered in future years as far as expansion of the college?
Well, the first problem which hit me, I think, which I consider to be very significant, was the fact that we had 47 faculty members and only 11%, approximately 11% of those faculty members had a doctor's degree. And I happened to be one at that time, and I still am one, who feels that if one goes to teach in college, you ought to get a doctor's degree. Well, I made an announcement to the faculty. I just jumped out on a limb. I wasn't here more than a week for my second faculty meeting. And I stated to the faculty that we were not going to dismiss anybody who didn't have a doctorate degree. But we were going to encourage, and I mean even put a little pressure on any faculty member who didn't have the degree, who was young enough to get the degree to get it. And also I made the statement that we weren't going to employ new faculty members if we could find one with a doctor's degree who was capable of teaching, all things being equal, one with a doctor's degree. Well, as a result of that, and that was the biggest weakness I found in terms of the school program. I think my predecessors did a wonderful job. Except how can you expect a college president who doesn't have a degree himself to encourage others and get by with it? So that is exactly what happened before I came. In other words, I believe I am correct that I was the first president with a doctor's degree. I believe I'm correct. As a result of that pressure, and most of the faculty members going along with me, even in the idea, in 1963, this college the percentage of faculty members with doctor's degrees reached 55%. The biggest percent of any school in Oklahoma. The biggest percent with doctor's degrees.
Does that include the two major universities?
Oh, that included OU and OSU. Yes, we had a larger percent in 1963 of faculty members holding the doctor's degree than OU and OSU. Now, they had a larger number, but our percentage was larger. And of course, the percentage had to drop then later on because as enrollments began to become more voluminous at the college each year, we just couldn't find enough doctor's degrees and didn't have enough money to finance it. And so we had to take a large number of faculty later on after 1963 without degrees.
I'm familiar with that.
Of course, I looked at the physical plan, and I couldn't blame anybody for the condition the physical plant was in, because the state had not adequately financed the colleges, these smaller colleges in Oklahoma. Just had not, and still hasn't done so. Even is not doing so today. The smaller colleges. Smaller colleges weren't considered, people generally just put up with them, you might say. But I think the smaller colleges today are gaining much more prestige than they used to have. I began to by discussing and appointing committees for physical development of the plant and so on and so forth. Our efforts. We were able to improve the campus and to build new buildings and so on and so forth. I believe it's true that we built around 40 buildings while I was here.
How did you secure the financing for that large expansion program?
Well, it was fortunate that I came in when I did. Actually, it's not all because of Harold Garrison that we progressed the way we did in terms of buildings. I came in immediately following Second World War and Korean War. And of course, that's when the college campuses began to burst in terms of enrollment. And of course, in order to take care of those increases in enrollment, you had to have more and bigger facilities. And so, I think our growth at Northeastern was just commensurate with the growth of all the institutions in Oklahoma in terms of the state coming along and supporting us in our needs for buildings, better grounds, and so on and so forth. However, I was willing to put a little bit more money into some buildings than some others were, and I was willing to jump out and take a chance on some dormitories, apartments, which some others were not prepared to do so.
When you say some others, you refer to other colleges?
Some other colleges, because they were afraid that they might overbuild. Well, I don't believe we overbuilt at Northeastern State College. I don't believe such a thing as that. I'll say this, that we didn't overbuild. Now, one reason that we don't have the enrollment college enrollment dropped is not because we have a new president. It has nothing to do with it. It's because certain governing bodies in Oklahoma permitted competitive schools to develop, supported by the state in this area, which took from our enrollment, in spite of the fact that we had gone on and built dormitories. And so I personally can say that we did not overbuild, but these governing bodies permitted other competitive schools supported by the state to be built in this area, which took enrollment. Now, maybe when Tulsa Junior College has had its first 3 or 4 years, and you maybe Northeastern will come back in terms of its enrollment. I hope so.
At the time that you were making your plans for expansion, the knowledge that there was going to be a Tulsa Community College or a conversion of Claremore simply was not available.
Oh, no. Nobody ever thought about it at Tulsa Junior College. And of course, Tulsa Junior College came later on when there was a building of junior colleges all over the nation. Because of this birth rate that's happened back there, increase in birth rate back there during World War II.
Dr. Garrison, in your initial months and years here, what was your impression of the student body of Northeastern? How did it compare, for instance, with that of the University of Oklahoma?
Well, I'll say this, at the University of Oklahoma, we generally had the idea that, well, we put up with these smaller colleges, but those students who go to those colleges are, they are of the class of students who are not quite as capable as the old people are, economically and academically, and so forth. But I learned differently when I came here. I learned that probably percentage-wise, intelligence-wise, we had just as good students as the University of Oklahoma had. They just didn't. I think the students were just as capable academically. Take the students. However, they didn't have the backgrounds that the OU and OSU had, because they came from families that didn't have language as the OU and OSU students have. And you know as well as I do that a student has a big advantage if he grows up in a home which has plenty of books, radio, television, and that and the other, this and that and the other, in terms of developing his mind in colleges. And they natively, they had I think they had the same ability OU and OSU students had, but we had to go back a little bit further in terms of meeting their needs. And of course, some of them we brought them up by the time they graduated to the level of those who graduated OU and OSU, and some of them we didn't. I was well pleased with the personnel of students at the time the students come to us.
At the time that you arrived as president, what was the major function of the college in terms of its principal contribution to the field of education?
Its major function was to prepare teachers for the public schools, plus pre-medicine, preparing those who are going to the OU medical school, pre-medical work, because Northeastern State College did have, and still does have, a very strong pre-medical program. And in fact, the dean of the college, Dean Bawley, L.H. Bawley, was a biologist himself, and he saw to it that we had a very strong pre-medical program.
After arriving, well, at the time that you arrived, did all of the various divisions exist on the campus that existed at the time you retired as president?
No, when I came here, we had 19 departments on the campus. 19 departments, even though some departments had only one teacher. And so in our executive council, and the executive council is made up generally of heads of departments, plus the registrar and other certain administrative offices. We decided one day that we had too many departments. And I appointed a committee to make a recommendation as to what we should do about reducing the number of departments. So the committee came up with the idea of having divisions rather than departments. And we originally organized into 7 divisions. When I left the college, we had 8 divisions, which included the library, and it was not a division at first. We consolidated many departments into divisions, and that's the way we had the divisions.
At the time you arrived, was instruction offered in all the various areas? For instance, was there the equivalent of instruction in library science, or was there instruction in the area of business administration as there was when you retired?
Yes, we had instruction in all the areas needed for teaching in the elementary and secondary schools in Oklahoma. Now we have added areas as the standards for teaching in the elementary and secondary grades increased in the state. We added areas, but we did have we did teach in all the areas which were necessary for teaching in the public schools. As far as library of science is concerned, we did not offer a library of science degree and don't today, but we offered enough library of science for people to become librarians in the public schools.
What, as president, are there any programs that you attempted to push or increase our offerings in that you took a particular special interest in?
Well, the first thing I began discussing and talking and researching and pressuring, you might say, was to offer a master's degree. Because when I came here, we were not offering a master's degree. One of my first projects in terms of increasing our faculty personnel as far as a doctor's degree is concerned was to put pressure on the governing bodies for us to offer a master's degree. I felt that we had just as strong faculty members in the fields of education and the academic fields which are associated with the fields of education for teacher preparation. We had just as strong faculty members at the University of Oklahoma and as Oklahoma University and Tulsa University, which schools were approved for offering master's degrees by the state. And I really worked on that program and well, I wasn't here. I came in 51, and we got approval for all the 6 state colleges, including Northeastern, Central State, Southeastern, Southwestern, Northwestern, East Central. We got approval in 1954 to offer the first master's degree. But there is a program which I did not get to establish in Northeastern, which I wanted to establish. But I still am going to do what I can to help it be established, because I know that Dr. Collier and the others wanted a nursing program. I do feel the need for Northeastern State College offering the degree of nursing in this area. It's needed very much. And but it's an expensive program, terribly expensive. You've got to have proper laboratory facilities. At the time I was there, the only laboratory facilities really which were available were in Tulsa. But I'm doing all I can today to assist in research in terms of developing a type of hospital in this area, a regional hospital, so that we can have available a laboratory for training nurses, and then Northeastern State College can offer a good nursing program with the degree, ultimate degree in nursing as their goal, as any other school in the state of Minnesota.
While you were president, Dr. Garrison, it appears to me that the function of Northeastern has changed a little bit. You mentioned that at the time you came, the role was primarily the preparation of teachers, and I know recently we have an increasing number of graduates in business administration, for instance, every year. Was there a great deal of encouragement by you to promote that type of development, or?
No, I didn't promote very much the development of business school or the law school or the pre-law students or some of those other areas, because I'm a teacher. I'm a public school teacher. I grew up in the public school in terms of teaching and so on. And as far as I'm concerned, we need better teachers. Now, if these other schools could come along with our trying to increase and improve the teaching profession and the teaching offerings, okay, and we did try to improve some of the areas, but we didn't plan on increasing the standards for, or rather the course numbers for business administration, without looking into and being sure that we weren't taking money from the teaching field, from the education field. Because I do firmly believe that Northeastern State College ought to continue to be its primary purpose, the education of teachers go out and teach boys and girls of Oklahoma and the United States. I just believe that.
While you were president, Dr. Garrison, there undoubtedly were times when you had what might be called unpleasant relations with the board. Did you ever encounter a situation where you requested a program or money for Northeastern where, because of the opposition of one of the other schools in the state, you were denied that?
Well, I don't know that I could say that I requested and was denied because other schools of the state protested. I don't think so. I just don't recall any situation like that. Now, I did request one time of the board that they permit us to buy 2 airplanes and for us to begin developing a program in aviation. Well, the board was willing for us to go so far to develop a ground school in aviation, but felt that we shouldn't put the money that was required for buying the airplanes into buying 2 airplanes, because that money was needed so much for the regularly established programs. And so the board turned down that request. Even though later on the board did approve the request for Southeastern State College to develop quite an aviation program. However, this was several years later, and URAT got an airplane through Surface Property Agency. Didn't pay nearly as much for it as would have cost us, and they have developed their aviation program down there in cooperation with a private school in Ardmore, which is an outstanding program. I would like to hear like that, and I think we will. The board did not refuse many of my requests, because I made it a point to study the board members very carefully, each one individually, and I tried to be very careful about presenting something to the board which I knew it would refuse. Sell them on the idea ahead of time. Before you really put it up to them officially, then you better be careful about making recommendations, because if the board isn't up on what you want to do, you probably down on it when you present it. One or 2 times the board felt that we were a little bit too fast in terms of some of our buildings. For instance, I want to build a new building a storage building on campus, and I want it to be a strong brick, concrete block, and so on and so forth. And the board, because one school had just recently gotten a storage building approved, one of these prefabs, had gotten it approved, didn't cost it as much as ours. The board suggested that I withdraw my recommendation on that until I had had time to study whether or not I'd like to have one of these sheet iron buildings, which they've built all over the nation and so on and so forth. So I just didn't re-recommend it to the board. Yes, there have been times when the board has turned down a few things, but the board was sincere. If it ever did, it was sincere in doing so. I can say this, that everything I really wanted and thought was valuable enough, the board came along later on and worked with me.
Dr. Garrison, in your relationship with the board, I know this will, if you answer the question, will be strictly an opinion, but do you feel like that you had a better relationship with the board than some of the other college presidents may have had?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think our board, see, our governing board has 6 colleges under its supervision. The Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education have all of the higher education. The Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education award degrees, approve curriculum, approve new courses, allocate money, which is appropriate for the legislature, allocate monies to the different institutions. And so actually I dealt with 2 boards. I dealt with the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education, which is also concerned with 17 other institutions in Oklahoma. And I dealt with the Board of Regents for Oklahoma Colleges, which has 5 other colleges. I would say that the board attempted and always attempted to look at each school's program and to act in such a way that a program on one campus wouldn't color their thinking for needs on another campus, except that if one campus recommended something which the board felt was good and another campus didn't have it, the board members might talk to us about it, to the presidents about it, and say, now, over here at Durant, they're using a catering service for their cafeteria, for their foods and so on. And they seem to be getting along well. You might want to look into that. That's the way the board would recommend it. Wouldn't say do it, but they would recommend it. I don't believe that I had any more influence on the board member in terms of getting a little bit more at Northeastern State College than any other president. I just don't believe that.
Well, let me ask my question a little differently. When you arrived at Northeastern, was the college approximately the same size as the other 6 state colleges?
Central State was larger. East Central was larger. Southwestern and Southeastern were about, and Northeastern were about the same. Northwestern was smaller. We grew faster. Central State grew faster. Our growth, I don't know whether our growth had anything to do with my being here, or my being here had anything to do with our normal schools or not. I don't know. I do know this, that we invited all the faculty members, everybody in this area of the state, through alumni meetings in Tulsa and Bartlesville and Miami and all around here to assist us in terms of the needs of Northeastern State College. I just don't believe any kind of favoritism was shown by anybody. Some people thought we got a little bit more than somebody else. If we did, I think maybe it's because I did have a desire to pay the faculty members the biggest salaries possible. And for years, and probably still true, I don't know about this next year, but and the faculty members who were paid during this past year, I had set the salaries. For years, we had the largest faculty salaries of any school in Oklahoma except OU and OSU. And as far as preparation is concerned, we had larger salaries than OU and OSU compared with preparation levels and so on. For instance, our only master's degree people got bigger salaries than OU or OSU only master's degree people. I'd say that if anything had to do with our growth, our enormous growth, other than just the fact that we had more people who went to college and so on during these years after the war, I'd say it had to do with our developing a esprit de corps among the faculty members and everybody concerned. Well, Northeastern is a good place to be because they sure do try to look out for the faculty members in terms of their salaries. It's amazing what money does in terms of salaries and helping to bring about progress.
Your answer got it, part of what I was trying to get at, but I'm going to rephrase my question and give you another opportunity to answer. Do you feel like that the relatively faster growth of Northeastern as compared to some of the other colleges was something that was due to the area where Northeastern is located, the need for a college here, or possibly was there some desire on the part of the board to see Northeastern grow, and thus they perhaps made possible the growth by giving larger appropriations than they did somewhere else?
No. I believe the fact that we lived in an area where at the time, or shortly after I came here, 5 or 6 years after I came here, the high school graduates in this area outnumbered the high school graduates of all other areas where our sister institutions are located, except in Oklahoma County, where Central State College is. In other words, I recall one year, one particular year, when we had 7,000 high school graduates in this area, and Oklahoma County had, the Central State area, they had only 6,500. I believe that's the only time when ours outnumbered. But these two numbers were much higher than the high school graduates in the areas generally assigned to Northwestern State, to East Central State, to Southeastern State. So, of course, we have there's OU and OSU, but discounting those because those draw from all the states. Those draw from all the states. Northeastern grew, I think, because of the big desire on the part of everybody, most people, for their children to get a college education. The war babies going to school and becoming more numerous in terms of those who want to get a college education. And are living in a populous area. Now, I think Northeastern would have grown faster, even if it had been located in Muskogee or in Tulsa. I think there's no doubt about that.
You've answered my basic question, but I still want to get you to sum it up for me. In other words, the board put the money where the people were going rather than trying to develop a college through some type of program.
Actually, the higher regions did not put the money where the people were going. Central State College and Northeastern State College have been shortchanged. Every year that I was president of Northeastern State College, that is every year. I mean, of course, we used to approve budgets only every 2 years. But every time a new budget came out, Central State College and Northeastern State College were shortchanged. Because we were in the middle. The smaller, lower enrollment colleges got more per pupil than we did. The two larger institutions, OU and OSU, got a lot more per pupil than we did. And so those two colleges, those two growing colleges, which were growing fast, the income did not increase in proportion to the numbers of increases we had in our students. Just didn't.
Yes, sir.
And so we were shortchanged. You go back and you figure the amount of money that our institutions got each year on the basis of how much $300. $500 per year. You'll find that Northeastern State College all the way along and was lower than all the others. The average cost to the education for educating a student at Northeastern is a pretty low figure as compared to other institutions. Do you feel like that there is any political significance to that? Is that because that perhaps people of political prominence are graduates of OU or OSU?
Oh, I think there's no doubt about whether or not OU and OSU got the hog share of appropriations from the legislature. Even in spite of the fact that the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education have the responsibility to allocate the appropriations, I think there's no doubt about OU and OSU got the hog share because of the tremendous pressures placed on the board. Now here, we've got to have two universities in Oklahoma which are second to none in the nation. And in order to do that, we've got to give them a little bit more money, or quite a bit more money than we do these smaller schools. I think there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I wouldn't say that I disagree with the Regents policy, because they must see to it that the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State University are comparable to the universities in the other states. And since the legislature hasn't been willing to finance Oklahoma schools, then the Regents had to take from the smaller schools and give to the bigger schools in order to have comparable universities.
Dr. Garrison, in the years that you had a relationship with the Board of Regents for the Oklahoma colleges, was it your experience that they pretty well allowed the various college presidents to run his own college, or was there much interference by the board?
Oh, I'd say that it came in cycles. There were years when the board was willing for the presidents to make all the recommendations, generally let the president run the college. Then there were years when the board took more of an administrative attitude and looked into the situation a little bit more carefully. For instance, some years I know that they would give more freedom in terms of what buildings were needed, and other years they would put strings on the recommendations for that. But I'd say in the latter years of my administration that the board began to take on more administrative responsibilities and took a few more responsibilities away from the president than the earlier years or the middle years. But I don't think it was because of the board's desire to do so, except the fact that I believe it was happening all over the nation. And I don't think the board was responsible. I think the courts, the attorney generals in the states and so on, in terms of student discipline, were saying to the board, you must do this, you must do that. And therefore they had to take responsibilities away from the president in terms of due process. A student had a right to a hearing and so on and so forth, whereas before we could dismiss a student and it wouldn't be questioned. But now the president doesn't have that responsibility. We could dismiss a faculty member and the board would go along with it. But the board finally had to say, now don't dismiss the faculty member unless you talk to us about it first. Because the faculty member actually has a right to appeal. Well, he had a right to appeal before, but the board generally went along with it. But I think because of the way things are going all over the nation in terms of constitutionality, freedoms, and so on and so forth, the board had to assume a little bit more administrative responsibility than it did earlier.
Did you find that hampered your operation?
Oh, there's no doubt about whether it's hampered. In fact, that was one of the reasons I wanted to retire early. is because I wasn't able to do a few things I thought ought to be done, especially in terms of disciplinary matters and employing faculty and so on and so forth. I wasn't able to do some of those things that I would like to do because I knew my hands were tied.
Could you be more specific?
Well, this business of whether or not to dismiss a student because of his actions, such as a riot, or penny raid, or drinking in the dormitories, things like that. We had to follow disciplinary policies which the governing board established. And up until 6 or 8 years ago, the governing board had no disciplinary policies. The president and his faculty ran the school. But since the board developed disciplinary policies upon the recommendation of the Attorney General, I had to, my hands were tied. And the president wasn't consulted in terms of disciplinary policies on the campus unless the student who was tried appealed to the president, and then he was consulted. That's a specific example.
Since we're talking about various college policies that were developed and that the college has, I would like to ask a question about what your role was in developing the policy that the college has had until just recently concerning leaves of absence, where, for instance, when I first came, I was handed a faculty handbook which informed me that it was my right to receive sabbatical leave to help me continue work on the doctorate. Was this a policy that you developed, or was it something that the board had when you came as president?
Well, the board's policies concerning leaves of absence for further study were developed by the board and the president and the faculty members. The policies for Northeastern State College and all the other 5 colleges under the supervision of our board are the same, exactly the same, and were developed by the board, and many of them upon the recommendation of the president after advising with faculty. And until I left the college campus last year, those policies were the same, and I'm sure are still the same for all the 6 state colleges. Leaves of absence policies, I'm sure, are the same. så var han inte hjälpt med sessen där skit. Jag var så vis. Det kan jag komma ner till ju. Han jag var så här just det var snart så var när skit gör med kassen surfen. Så vis så ska vara knäsen ner. Han har fått knäsen i skit för real. Hemma med det. Han har fått en så här droppmark. Earlier, zero, so foul, I'm
Ja, så nafset det där med ju. Jag med för den löster men den power and sure. Very men jag har ju sorry, bara att så vi menar seriöst så vem är det så